It is so great to be here, and it is so awesome that a global community of Agilists can come together in this way. And I guess if there's one good thing that COVID brought, it brought people that wouldn't normally get to interact together. So that is fantastic. I guess I'm new to this group too, so I'll just introduce myself as well. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I have been working on Agile transformations for well over a decade, and I started my career in marketing, started my Agile career really in software, and have sort of seen the evolution of things in both sides of the world. And I'll give you a little bit of perspective around that as we kind of go into what the hell is hybrid? Let's navigate Agile marketing. So hopefully you can all see my screen. This is going to be a presentation, but this is also should be a conversation as well. Can you, Michael, is that you? Can you see it?
We can see your screen.
Okay, yeah, so it's a conversation. Feel free to jump in anytime with questions. And I know Michael introduced himself. He helped co-create the Agile Marketing Navigator, which we're going to be talking about. And we're going to talk to you about hybrid and how this has worked in Agile marketing over the past few years. So first of all, I've heard you guys already mention some things about Scrum, different frameworks. Are you all familiar with some of these frameworks, Scrum, Kanban, Lean, etc.? Yeah. So there are a number of different frameworks. Which ones are you currently using? And is anyone here doing Agile kind of outside of the software context? I'd love to just hear a quick, like, show of hands if you're working in software outside of IT. Tom, I see a hand up there. So when Tom, what kind of group are you working with?
Telephony.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So what has happened in the marketing space is Scrum's been the gold standard for a long time in software, but marketers are like, we're going to reinvent the wheel. Like we're going to do our own thing. And so they have been taking and cobbling bits together of Scrum and of Kanban and of Lean and trying to make it work in the Agile space. Now you have to realize in marketing, it's a lot, they're in their infancy in the Agile space compared to software development. Software development has been doing this about 20 years. Marketing's been doing it about 10 years. And I would say mainstream, it's still relatively new. Like it's still they're where software was probably 15 years ago. So they're very behind in the journey. But what we've seen happen in the marketing space is this hybrid method. And what we're doing is we've gotten a report. There's a State of Agile Marketing report that comes out every year. And it's really saying, it's taken us 5 years, but hybrid frameworks are what's happening, but we're continually struggling with this education, and the path has been a long and winding one, right? It's the adoption that we're seeing of Agile in marketing is not in the same place that it was in software. And so with all of these frameworks coming to play, what we're really seeing is chaos. And I have personally witnessed a lot of chaos or a lot of misconception about what Agile is, what Agile isn't. I had one client that I went into and they're like, we're doing Agile marketing. We've been doing it for a year. We have an Agile tool. And that was it. And so there's some fundamental misses happening as marketers who are very, very new to the Agile space. Don't have common language, don't have a common way that they're going about this. So they're all reinventing the wheel. And this has really caused a ton of chaos in the marketing field. Have any of you witnessed Agile chaos where you're working? I'd love to hear about it. Or is it pretty smooth?
No, so I'm trying to turn on my camera here, having a hard time. So I guess many organizations, before they go into a full-blown Agile transformation, they experiment a lot with Agile. and they do it in different parts of the organization. And then, they don't have standards. There's different people doing Agile different ways. So when you go into an organization that's been doing it like that, they actually have a bad taste of Agile, unfortunately, right? Because they haven't had the right coaches in there helping them that have had an experience doing a full Agile transformation. So that, I would call that a little bit of chaos, right?
Yeah.
And that's very common. That's very common in different types of industries. Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely is common. And so the thing is, I was kind of naive. So my first experience in Agile coaching was in software development. And as most of ours are, but I decided to focus on marketing because that was my background. That's my true place I felt in this world. But when I made that transition and I said, all right, I'm going to go and I'm going to apply how I've been leading transformations within software teams into marketing. And I love Scrum. I think Scrum is fantastic. That was kind of, the basis of what I'd seen work really well. And I think in theory it does work really well. However, when you go into practice something, you need adoption from the people. And marketers were like, no. That's the software way. We are going to do it differently. And so this is kind of the fundamental problem that that I was seeing as I started going into marketing teams is they're like, we are making our own hybrid framework up. We don't want to just cut and paste how it's done in software. And so many Agile coaches were saying like, how do we talk to marketing teams better? How do we speak in language that works for them and that makes sense for them? And so this has really led to this sort of chaos coaching. And I'm going to turn over to Michael just for a second to kind of add his perspective on this as well. Like, what's some of the chaos that you've seen with hybrid frameworks?
Yeah, so I take a step back and say, being in marketing for the time that I've been in marketing, which is a long time, we started to notice that most of the products that we are putting into market are digital products, right? So they're following like that kind of agile software development, product development cycle. And so as we look over, we say that's working really well. The chaos becomes when we try and just take that and put it into our world, because they're different worlds. The chaos also comes around trying to fix things that may not need to be fixed, and other things that we try to implement because it looks right in IT or in development and just doesn't fit within marketing. So the chaos becomes that there's also no standard for what hybrid is. It's like, well, you're on your own. So that's the chaos that I've kind of seen. And here's the thing, every marketing department, if you've ever interfaced with marketing departments, are different. And they think of marketing in a slightly different way. Their focus is on marketing and communications, a very big landscape. So it's very tough to say your marketing is the same as my marketing, or the product you're developing in your world of IT and software is the same as the product I'm developing. I will say there's more similarities in how you build a product through what you guys are used to and what you can coalesce around or organize around, versus marketing, which tends to be by its very nature chaotic to begin with. So I'll leave it there and pass it along to Stacy, but that's where I see the chaos kind of happening.
Yeah, so this is the perfect slide for this international group, right? There's all these different languages happening. And so this is the problem that we were seeing in marketing, is that everybody's speaking a different language, right? The French over here, they're another language over here, as they're trying to navigate what agile marketing means in their organization. And because there wasn't pure buy-in on a single standard way of operating or a pure framework like Scrum out of the gates, this is like what's happening, right? And if you and I were all to get into this room and all speak our native language to each other, if we all have different languages, we would have a lot of chaos and confusion, right? It's hard. So we need to come up and align on some commonalities. What this has really led to is a lot of failed adoption in agile marketing, right? We have a lot of people trying agile marketing, but it hasn't accelerated and it hasn't worked as well, quite frankly, as it did in software. And I think part of that reason is there were several frameworks in software that before Scrum became the one. There was XP, there was Crystal Programming, there were all of these different frameworks in the world, but eventually their community kind of landed on Scrum as the gold standard, and Kanban somewhat too, but most of them are using Scrum. And it took a long time and a long evolution to get to that place. But once that was sort of the common way, I think it made adoption a lot better in the software space. It didn't make it perfect. There are still organizational battles and organizational challenges that these companies face. However, when they had a common language and a common idea on how are we going to go about getting Agile, to where it needs to go, it really did accelerate. So in marketing, like I said, we're very behind. Their Agile Software Manifesto was written in 2001. The first Agile Marketing Manifesto was written, it was 9 or 10 years ago. And very, very small community. And that community actually came back together in 2021. And Michael and I were part of this. And they rewrote the Agile Marketing Manifesto. And the Agile Marketing Manifesto is great in the fact that it aligns people on common values. Very well needed. I'm glad that that happened and that they reiterated on it. However, marketers were still left with kind of this and this, right? This failed adoption in Agile marketing, because even though some of the community leaders understood the values and principles and had alignment there's been no alignment in now how do we go implement this, right? So we have two sides of it. We have to understand the values we're trying to implement against, and then we don't want to be prescriptive, but we want to have a common language, a common way of making this work.
And to reemphasize and to just reinforce, where I think failed adoptions happen a lot of the times is when marketing just looks over the shoulder of another department, doesn't realize that there's actually a manifesto full of values and principles to guide us. So to give us the mindset, right, and allow us to sort of move forward. And I say that's the overall strategy, right? The frameworks become the tactics and how you do it. But I think where it's failed with marketing is we've gone headlong into frameworks without thinking about where it sits. So this came out of obviously having an Agile marketing manifesto specific for us and what we're trying to do overall to drive these efforts. And so they are connected. But obviously we needed something that was a little more reflecting what we do when we actually execute.
All right, so just kind of getting back to Scrum methods, right? Anyone who has studied Scrum or has worked on a team with Scrum, we have common terminology, right? A sprint, a Scrum Master, a product owner, the words mean something to people. People know what these are. They can take a class, they can learn what these things are, and at least they have the same common language. And like I said, I'm a huge proponent of Scrum. I think it really works. I think it really could work by the book in marketing with a few little tweaks. And so, but we needed to meet marketers where they are at, right? Like we can't just try to impose a framework on marketers. We have to meet marketers in a way that they're going to accept change. So I want to make this interactive, and I want you to go back and talk, and we're going to do breakout rooms of 3. If you're totally new to Agile, maybe there's an experienced person in your room, but want to spend 5 minutes getting to know each other and talking about what is maybe the biggest challenge in implementing Agile, if you are part of implementing Agile, and especially if you're doing this outside of IT, what challenges have you personally experienced? And if you're brand new to this, maybe there's someone more experienced in the room that can just answer some questions, or maybe what's the biggest thing that you feel could be challenging in your organization with this. So we're going to go ahead and do a 5-minute small group talk, and then we'll come back and bring it back together.
All right, you have many of you have received an invite. You're free to go. There we go. And I'm setting the timer for 5 minutes. There we go. Okay, so Yulia and Kueme and Michael and LL, I think you need to go to the breaker rooms. Please join. The notification or the pop-up you have right there on your Zoom screen. Oh, yeah, sorry about that, Michael. No worries, no worries. Can you hear me, Yulia, ma'am?
All right, we're back. Did you guys have fun?
Oh, yes.
Always an awkward exit.
Oh, I know. It's like the break room countdown. 8, 9, 7.
We're trying
Yeah.
to like wrap it up.
Next minute. Yeah.
I hope you all had some meaningful conversations. I know that I had a meaningful conversation in our group, but does anybody want to share what they said kind of their biggest challenge there
Say hi.
with their Agile transformation that they might be in, or Agile team that you're working with?
I'll share. Hi everyone, my name is Amanda. Can you guys hear me? I'm like,
Yeah.
sitting in my car at my son's football practice. We just had a conversation. I don't want to get her name wrong. It's Daria. Daria, yes. So she shared with me that she's new to Agile and Scrum, but I just gave her a little bit of my background. But our organization is actually new to Agile and Scrum as well. So that's what we're using far as our project management and things like that. We do have a project management office, but we're using Scrum. And it seems like we're using Scrum with a little bit of Lean, because I have a black belt and I'm a business analyst and a product owner. So we're like all mixed up in our PMO team. So it's almost like we're using a little bit of everything, but it is new to the both of us when working with Scrum and Agile. So that's what we kind of discussed. And just her, her wanting to get different certifications and things like that.
Yeah. And honestly, if it were, what you're doing at your company, if it works, like don't change it, right? Don't fix it if it's broken. And what we are trying to address is, as a larger marketing industry, how can we accelerate transformations? There must be a better way. So about a year ago, I had this epiphany after working with a lot of different clients in marketing and having, done that in marketing, probably specifically the last 3 or 4 years, IT before that, going, there must be a better way. And it was like this light bulb went off and I went, we need our own framework. We need a framework that can help marketers have common language that makes sense to them, that addresses their unique needs that might be a little bit different from what we've seen in the software space. I had taught tons and tons of certified Scrum classes with Mike Cohen, if you know who he is, and founder in the Agile industry and software. And I kept hearing a lot of people in the class that were coming in from outside of IT saying, I'm having to do this translation. It's just not working for me. And so this must be a better way. So here's what happened. I call him for a publication called Martech Today, and I was like, I'm going to write a framework in a couple of hours, and I'm going to put this together, and I'm going to publish this as an article, and it'll be great. And then I realized it's so much more than me, right? You can't just adopt a framework from one perspective. You can't just adopt a framework because one person has a good idea or one person writes about it in a book, right? It's too one directional, right? We needed to be able to say, how can we figure out something that's going to work in all these different kinds of marketing organizations? We've got agencies, we've got large corporate side, we've got traditional marketers, we've got digital marketers, we've got marketing communication people and public relations people, and all these like vast amounts of needs. And so Michael here had approached me about, hey, we're doing the same thing. Could we collaborate on something? And so I'm like, well, let me pitch this idea that I had to you. I have this idea for a new framework, and I had a draft of it in a Google Doc. And Michael, what happened from there?
I thought you were crazy, but I let you just run with it for a little while. No, it was actually, I kind of felt like our industry was on the cusp of greatness with agility, but we weren't there yet. And it was still really new. And so Stacy had walked me through, and I sort of did what I usually do, which was, let's poke holes in it and see if it works still. So it really became a collaborative process where we brought together the community of marketers that we both know that were practicing agility, so had an idea of what we were kind of up against here. And we took it sort of to the point of having something that was our MVP.
Yeah. So we started a group. We reached out to our clients. We reached out to different levels. We had senior level marketers that were trying to do Agile in their companies involved in this group. We had Agile coaches and consultants in this group. We had big companies, small companies. We had kind of, you name it. We had a small working group of about 7 or 8 of us from all walks of life that had personally experienced this. And we had our own kind of best practices and things that were working and things that weren't working. And so we decided to start meeting and collaborating and taking what I had done as a draft and poking holes at it, picking it apart, trying to figure out what do we want to call things? What's the terminology? What are the practices that are working and that are not working within marketing organizations? And how can we shape this to something that's usable, that's something that people can take and go, oh my gosh, I kind of see the way now. I can start making this happen. Now, Michael will be the first one to tell you that I was like, this is taking forever. I could have just taken my paper that I wrote in a couple of hours, excuse me, and I could have published it and we could have been done with this. And this took about 6 months of iteration. And I'm not the most patient person in the world. I was like, oh my God, this is so slow. But I knew that it was bigger than my idea. And I knew that for anything to stick and to have lasting power, it has to be collaborative, and that we have to be agile and talk and live and breathe the way we are teaching others to work in an effort to create something. So we iterated. We took different sections and we iterated on them until we figured we kind of came to a MVP, minimally viable product with it. And we went section by section and we heard different perspectives and we kept iterating. And then we finally got to where we thought was a good place, and everyone really was part of it. And it was a community piece. And so we ended up naming this piece the Agile Marketing Navigator. And the Agile Marketing Navigator launched in April of this year. So you are one of the first people to hear about it. And we wanted to, first of all, figure out a practical way for navigating Agile marketing. We did not want anything dogmatic. We didn't want a lot of rules. We didn't want, the police coming in saying, you aren't doing Agile right if you're not doing this. So And marketers, quite frankly, won't take that sort of command and control type of adoption. And so we had to think of what would be different here. Sorry, this is slightly out of order. So we went into these 4 distinct buckets that we kind of iterated on. One is called the Collaborative Planning Workshop, the launch cycle, 6 key practices, and 6 roles. And within each of these 4 sections, we had numerous things that we talked about over and over and over until we got to calling them what we wanted to call them. And so here's kind of what we ended up with, our sort of mission statement, as you will, as a community. After seeing marketers struggle to successfully implement Agile marketing in a way that works for them, we came together as an Agile marketing community to create a flexible, adaptable, and customizable framework for marketers by marketers. It's inspired by what we've really seen work in our world. You can use this framework as navigation for your Agile marketing implementation, picking and choosing pieces that meet your needs. And so we have found it works really well with IT departments already using Scrum. It's very comparable, but yet it applies to what marketers are trying to do. So we have a couple of call outs that we wanted to say that are different from some of the other frameworks out there that we're really trying to highlight in this new framework. One is we wanted to align business to the work, right? So that's something that was getting missed a lot in marketing. So what was happening in the world of marketing is I call it the McDonald's worker, McDonald's order syndrome, right? Things were coming through it, what we call creative briefs, which would be similar to an IT requirements document. It would be passed over to marketers, and marketers were not having a voice or a consultative approach in the process. And it would just be like widget delivering, right? I need 8 emails, I need 3 blog posts, and I need a web page, or whatever these different elements are. And so there was no time back to, like, as a strategy, what are the big business goals that we're trying to accomplish? How are we getting there? How does this work tie together? So we added that element to this framework. We added in also a time for creative brainstorming. This is so key in marketing, especially when you have a lot of creative-minded individuals, that brainstorming and having the team be able to help populate the backlog and it not just being work assigned. And that this brainstorming happens in conjunction with some of the business partners that might be requesting work in marketing, whether that is like a sales lead or a customer service department or even a product department. So we added this creative brainstorming element to the framework. We also added new roles, not because we wanted to add new things, but because one of the things that we found in Scrum that was maybe not working, and I'd love to hear if anyone's experienced this too, is that we often only refer to Scrum as the people on the Scrum team, when in fact, business agility, as you know it, is an entire organizational mindset shift. And so we included roles for really, what do our stakeholders do in this? What do our managers do in this? We're calling them practices. How do they fit into this Agile ecosystem, right? Because they're often the forgotten roles. We don't train them. We don't talk about where they are. And that's a big missing link. We offer, like I said, suggested practices, but it's kind of pick and choose. You don't have to do them all. And in fact, if there are other ones that you're already working on that work, we're like, that's awesome, great. Here's ones we know have worked. And then a lot of it is different naming. You'll see some things are similar to what's already out there, but we wanted it to appeal more to marketers and to be more descriptive of the outcomes that we're trying to see. And I'm going to say, Michael, that was a mouthful I had. Do you have anything to add right there?
Yeah, so I'll just wrap it up by saying marketing is an extremely unique, sometimes misunderstood function within the organization. I really think that, I also teach marketing. I'm a professor at a university here in Toronto. So I teach this stuff, and I teach creative, and I teach also like analytics, like 2 totally different worlds. But we're really talking about in marketing a left and right brain function. Right, it's one of those departments where you can go as left brain as you want. Right, you can be as rigid and empirical and what have you. And on the other side, you can be right brain. You can be totally creative. Right, and we bring that together. So we had to reflect that in our framework, and also reflect the different nature of what marketing does in the organization. But I think most importantly, it's the first bullet point there. We have, and I see this. In marketing, we've lost a bit of our narrative and our way because we stopped connecting to business goals. I don't know when as a discipline, but I can tell you a lot. And I believe it's digital marketing. I believe it's social media. And I think they're wonderful things, but we sometimes get lost in what are we doing this for? Is it just work? right? Like it's very easy to create a lot of work, a lot of outputs without actually driving to an outcome. And so one of the most important and resonating pieces of what we deliver through our navigator model is connecting your actual business goal. Like we want CMOs to sit back in the C-suite and say, this is what we've impacted with the business versus, do you just like our creative? Right? Because one has to drive the other. And I think that's really where we sort of put it into, take it out of neutral and put it into gear.
Well said. Well said. Anyone have questions so far? Feel free to jump in. All right, so I'm not going to walk you through every piece, but I want to highlight a couple of things. We call it our first stop in the Agile Marketing Navigator is the collaborative planning workshop. And if you've ever heard like SAFE does sort of big room planning, it's kind of a take on that a little bit, but it is a little bit different. It is more of a single team and inviting in some of their business partners. Oftentimes marketing is really tied to sales or product management, et cetera, as customers of what they do, and bringing those business goals all the way through. So we have 4 main components here, and this is where it is really different than kind of an existing framework. We have what we call our guide point, and that is really like, what is the team striving for in the next, typically we say quarter, like a quarterly goal. What is the team after? What are they trying to deliver? And how is that team's guide point laddering up to maybe some business KPIs or goals that they're responsible for? So that's the first thing. And we have said in our first version that we do this collaboratively, coming up with a guide point. We have found some teams that they're really new, it helps for the product owner or that product owner type role to come in with a guide point already to kind of align the team along that. But then we do a creative brainstorm, and this is really ideating, but we want to ideate with a guide in mind, right? We don't want to just say randomly ideate ideas because those ideas may not be useful at all. So we want to align the team and those stakeholders on what we're trying, what the box is of guiding, where's that guiding thing that they're trying to work towards, and how that ties up to the business goals. So we do this brainstorming, and then we think about minimally viable launch. And if you've heard of minimally viable product, sort of similar concept. It's like, what can we test and learn in marketing that's minimally viable instead of thinking of things as a big bang campaign? And that's how marketers used to do things. They would say, we're doing a big product launch and we're going to throw all these things at the wall and hope they stick. So, and we're not going to know if we're right until the end. So minimally viable launch is important to think about. What are those minimal things that we can do to see if our marketing is on track, if it's working? And then the output that comes out of this collaborative planning workshop is called a blueprint. And if you've used road mapping before, it is the same thing. It's really a roadmap. It's like, okay, what are those, key things that this team is going to deliver upon in the upcoming months, and making sure that that comes out of that. But then it's a discussion point, like any, blueprint or roadmap should be, right? It's not set in stone. As we learn more, that blueprint might change, it might modify, but it is a conversation starter that elevates that conversation a little bit higher than just a backlog, right? Because if you've ever tried to talk to leaders about your backlog, that can go nowhere really, really quickly. So this is an example of what a blueprint looks like with a guide point written in it for a marketing team. So we talk about our guide point saying a campaign targeting suggestive add-on purchases, moving the average cart checkout price to $50. So this would be a online retailer, and the main things that they might do in like a campaign blueprint. So that they can always kind of keep these high-level things front and center with their stakeholders and have that stakeholder dialogue continuously. So we feel like this is such a needed piece that we wanted to address it. Our next thing is called the launch cycle, and you'll see it's really similar to Scrum with a few name changes and a few slight nuances. but it has these 5 pieces to it. We put the marketing backlog in there because it just seems to be an important element we want to call out. And cycle planning would be similar to sprint planning. It's the team planning what they're going to work on next. And the daily huddle, we named it huddle because we want to be more descriptive of like, hey, this should feel like a huddle and we're getting together and huddling. And of course, we're not using the Scrum words. The team showcase is very similar to the Scrum's sprint review, but it's a little bit nuanced different. And it's different because in marketing, we don't always have the cycles that work and align exactly like a product team does or a software team where you're iterating on a software product for several sprints before it's released. In marketing, we might release social media posts 10 times in one day. So just saying we're reviewing work at the end of a sprint of what we did in the sprint doesn't really apply so much. It may or it may not fit. And so what we're really focusing here on this team showcase is some of the work that the team did, but there's also a lot of data and metrics that come out of marketing campaigns. So that is coming to light in this team showcase. How are our campaigns performing? Let's have a discussion around that. What kind of things are we seeing? And what are we going to stop working on? So we're going to have a nail it and scale it mindset. So what's working well? What are we dropping? So that's what we're trying to do there. And then the team improvement is similar to a retrospective if you've done retrospectives before.
That is the exact question that just came up.
I just saw that. Are they part of the team improvement? Absolutely. So exactly the same as a retrospective. The reason we named it team improvement too, by the way, has anyone had a retrospective that becomes kind of a bitch session? Like people just complain every time. Like Emily's laughing. She's seen that one, but for Emily, tell me how that's gone for you.
Oh gosh, it's gone horrible. And I've lost control of the session because it gets very colorful. Or the next retrospective we would try to have would be the absolute opposite, where no one wants to talk because they're like, well, if I say anything, it'll just turn into an argument. And it's just, yeah, it could be rough.
Yeah, I've been in plenty of retrospectives like that myself over the last decade. I totally understand. So why we called it team improvement, right? What is the output, right? Or the outcome we're trying to get out of the retrospective, right? It's continuous improvement. It's continuous team improvement. And so we're really trying to put more emphasis on the improvement piece of it that comes out of it versus just the rehashing what went wrong. So the meeting may look exactly the same, but we're really saying like, leave this with one action item that will help you improve. And we're really putting some focus and emphasis on that particular bit. Other questions, comments, thoughts so far?
I have just comment here, like, because we had very, like, not horrible session of retrospective, but right now it is much better. And just because we are doing right now as it is improvement, so we are creating action points for the team, and we create a deadlines who should do something until what time, and it really helps. And that's when it become more improvement and not just complaining, because we are constantly trying to fix it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you for sharing. Tom, I see your question in the chat. I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, nice work, by the way. The first thing that popped into my head was version control, right? As you're building this out, how do you make sure that the freshest stuff is in front of everybody? Number one. But then I kind of shifted to, what does it look like for the, you're not so much, you're using, are you using Agile to invent an Agile method?
Are we using Agile? I believe it, like the process you mean of how we like came together as a team and iterated upon this?
Right.
Yes. very much so. So yeah, it was teamwork. It was collaborative. It was iterative. We iterated. We have a minimally viable launch that we did in April, and it may change, right? And we do have an open source website I'll share. So it's free. It's available to everyone. And so that was sort of the idea with the community piece of it, right? Unless things are accessible, it doesn't do any good.
No, very
I think
good.
one of the agile ways we went about it also was it's not, Stacy mentioned it, but I like to use the frame trying to follow the spirit of agile versus the religion of it. And we're also, very pragmatic about how to use it in an agile way, like, work with what works for you. These are all quote unquote best practice. But what's a best practice? A best practice is somebody who took it and made it their own best practice. So these are our practices that we know have worked really well, that you can then take and pick and choose, hopefully all of them or a subset, and make them your best practice by actually working them out uniquely in your organization for your teams.
Very good. It's almost like you were asked that question before, Michael, and you answered it really nicely.
Perhaps I was. I spend a lot of time in front of lecture halls. I have to think before I talk. I wish I did that at home, but I don't.
No, that's good. Appreciate it. It's nice to, is it a crowdsourcing when you say open source? Is it a crowd? Do you have a lot of comments and feedbacks or?
Not really. At this point, we've kind of been taking a lot of feedback, like one-on-one feedback or people writing to us and letting us know or speaking in this way. But it is open source. In other words, it's there. It's like the Scrum guide. You can go and use it. Obviously, we have our own way of delivering it and as a product that we bring into organizations, but it's there to look at. And, a lot of marketers have reached out and said, this is great. Like, what do I do with it next? That's where we come in. But those who are in the know, right? If you can recognize what's going on with it and you have good traction with, what we're trying to say through it, it is very, it's a little bit of add water, elbow grease, and figure it out. And we're always here to answer any questions if you need.
Yeah. I guess was it a good way to get the attention of marketers by using a little bit more of their language and then getting them excited about Agile, right? Is that maybe
you just have
a little bit of the approach? Yeah.
All I have to do with marketers is put something bright and shiny in front of them, and they were just like squirrels look away. So I know my audience, but yes, I mean, it really is important to say, look, here's my contention. That marketing has gone through over the past 20, 25 years, a lot of transitions, but we've never really truly transformed. The way that we transform is through our people, right? How we treat them, how we empower them, and the ways that we can allow them to work. All other things will still be there, right? The marketing discipline, the ways that the platforms, the way we go about it. But, our marketers on the front line are much closer to understanding what's going on TikTok than any CMO ever will be. So why do we pretend that we should just cascade down, command and control ideas for how to market? So it's kind of the best way I can say it is it's kind of democratizing marketing as well as agility for marketing.
All right, great questions. So these are the 6 key practices, and you've probably heard, if you've been around Agile for some time, a lot of these. Customer stories are essentially user stories with a little bit different twist, talking about how they're used in a customer setting. How marketers adopt these is slightly different. So we find that sometimes they need to think really big before they can think small. That has definitely been a battle that I've fought as a coach, trying to do this from IT to marketing, where typically in software, we can look at little bits and widgets. And when you talk about stories to marketers, they're thinking customer journeys and big things. So it tends to sometimes be big thinking before it gets into small bite-sized chunks. That's typical in Agile. So it's a little bit different take. Story points. I often get asked this one, like, why in the world would you use story points in marketing? And there's some resistance here, but I've also had a client that is like, oh my God, we use this in marketing and this is the best thing ever, because our marketers are just asked to do too much. And that's one of the big challenges they have. They're overworked, understaffed. I think that's probably a challenge everywhere, but it's definitely a huge burden in marketing. And so being able to quantify, the velocity and how much work a team can actually take on and be able to do some of those things and bring that back to leadership, we found has been useful. Some of these things are from Kanban, right? Work in progress limits. If y'all have studied Kanban, that is a Kanban practice. It isn't something I have tried with marketers out the gate. I have found they got to be a little bit more advanced before we start adding work in progress limits to them. But when they're a little bit more mature team, you can start to do that. And what that does, if you're not familiar with that, is it says, hey, we want to look at our flow and where things get stuck, and we want to have a focused effort. So we want to have 3 or 4 things only in queue at once, not 10 or 20. So helps limit them so things actually get finished, not just started. Measuring cycle time is part of Kanban as well, and that's really looking at a work item type. So we might look at something like a blog post and realize it's taking way too long to deliver that end to end. What is that cycle time? How long on average? Maybe it's taking 30 days. What is happening? Let's examine that as a team and as leaders and how we can improve that process. So that's part of that continuous improvement. And then waste removal, I heard Lean mentioned here. Lean is really about waste removal, right? What processes are bogging you down? What's unnecessary? What meetings are you going to that you don't need to go to just because they were on your calendar? So trying to think of how can we do the least, right? What can we minimize? And then the last one is partnering, and similar concept to pair programming and software development, but this typically is partnering with a graphic designer and a copywriter. Those two tend to be really logical partners that we see a lot. And instead of having one have to finish and hand it over to the next one, getting them to partner on that story from the beginning, working together and collaborating back and forth. So those are some of the practices that we have. So Sharon, you asked, are those relative story points? If so, what is used as a base? And let's see, where Sharon, do you want to wave to me? There you are. Okay, yeah, great question. Are you familiar with story point estimation in software development?
I am. So, but mine is from an IT perspective. So I'd like to hear from the marketing perspective, like what's used as a base or as your starting point for the story points that the team comes up with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So fundamentally, story points in marketing are no different from story points that you're already doing. So on a level set that. I will say, having coached both marketers and software people, marketers get this because they don't have estimation baggage like software people do. Software people have just this huge estimation baggage, right? They've been nailed on estimation for so long, and oh my God, is this days? Is this so we don't have that baggage, which is really great. So they get this fundamentally right away. And so I like to simplify that modified Fibonacci a little bit, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Kind of thinking of it as small thing to kind of large thing. I think the simpler that you can make that scale, the better. When we train people, we'll usually go in and say, what's the easiest work item type that you do? Is it a social post? And maybe we say social post is a 1 point. Now let's start comparing your other work item types. And it's actually so much easier in marketing because they don't have that many different work item types. Software development is different every single time. Marketing, we have buckets of work item types that are pretty much the same, right? A blog post, a press release, a landing page and a website, things like that. So they're fairly standardized. So it's really easy to put a story point scale to it.
Okay, so you do a list of the different tasks or different things that the marketer does in their day-to-day and prioritize it or rate it relative to each other.
The other, yeah. And after they've been doing that for a little while, I mean, it's so automatic, right? They don't even need to do it. Okay, we have another blog post. That's a 3. We called it. Unless there's something vastly different or out of the ordinary, it can be a very, very quick thing. And this is not meant to be a long, painful type of estimation. And Tom likes estimation baggage. Yes.
Yeah, one of the other things that this does really well, as you're starting to pull apart the work and understand what's involved in it, there's a lot of dark work in marketing, stuff going on behind the scenes, and nobody knows what's going on. They just expect the blog post, and then it gets posted, and it's like, oh, well, that only took, one person 2 hours. No, it took a lot of people 2 hours. Somebody had to do the analytics, somebody had to do the posting, somebody had to, right? So there's a lot of stuff that gets unpacked. And when you see, that should be a simple story, should be lower on the point scale. That's really helping us to expose what's actually involved in the work.
Yeah, and it is also when you're new and you're coaching new teams, when you have people that have only stayed in their lane, okay, now we can start to understand the whole end, the whole customer's deliverable. So I find that to be very important.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, any other questions here in this piece? All right, so what the hell is hybrid? And I hope you don't mind the hell, but Michael came up with that, so I'll blame him.
I came up with the worst word. She changed it. So
we are hybrid, right? This framework is hybrid. So marketers are saying we only want to do hybrid. This is a hybrid framework. It is essentially taking the best of what's out there, packaging it up, making it easy for marketers to use and to implement. And if you go to agilemarketingnavigator.org, you can download a PDF with the whole navigator there. You can print it out, you can use it. The website's there. And there is somewhere on the website for you to send us feedback. So we would love to hear if you have comments on it. Of course, you can connect with me or Michael. Do you want to put your contact in the chat as well?
I will do that for sure.
Yeah, so feel free to connect with us. If you're working with any marketing teams, we'd love to come in and help them. We are also Agile coaches and Agile trainers, and we both offer certified Agile marketer courses as well. We are developing courses around the Agile Marketing Navigator framework too, so that is being developed and can be offered as well. So we have kind of two things. One is the IC Agile is a really good certified overview, a lot of the mindset stuff, a lot of different ways to do it. And then the Agile Marketing Navigator is like, okay, we're ready to hit the ground running. How do we implement this? And so that's more that implementation side of it. But we'll open up the floor for other questions, comments, thoughts, or any conversation. Thank you so much for listening. I hope
thanks, guys.
Helpful.
I have a question. So can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
So which framework or mix of framework have you seen work best for the marketing areas, Scrum or Kanban? Or a version of Scrum or Kanban?
Yeah, so I think what you see in this framework is we have parts of Scrum, Kanban, Lean, like it's kind of all of it, right? We've sort of taken the hybrid that we thought kind of melded the best, and that is what Agile Marketing Navigator.
And I think there's an it depends answer in there.
Yeah, that's true.
The only thing you're doing is content marketing, and it's just a conveyor belt of activity. You're probably better off with like a Kanban orientation of just flow. If you are more into delivering a campaign, trying to suss out its minimum viability, or if you're trying to optimize, right? You've got landing pages or other elements, tactics you want to optimize, and you're doing it sort of from a test and learn continuous improvement, you're going to want to do it in sprints so that you can have a closed loop on one test, get the results, move on to the next, and understand what you're actually improving. So I think what we tried to do here is reflect kind of both, but a bit with the navigator of leaning towards sort of the bigger marketing initiatives that are going to drive a lot of revenue as opposed to just always on activities.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Any other questions, guys?
I have a question. How have you found the best way to introduce this? So let's say there's a project already going. Typically the marketing team's the last one to find out, right? So they have to reverse engineer their timeline. How do you introduce some of that?
Yeah, You mean to the framework itself, if they're already doing Agile?
Yeah, to the marketing team. I mean, typically the marketing team's doing their own thing, really.
Right, right.
How have you introduced this?
We usually were kind of brought in to help them learn the agile marketing, so that way we can kind of bring this in. If it's not us sort of with that role, I think bits and pieces of it, right? You can take this navigator and you can look and see like, hey, what's a good starting point? I found like the daily huddle. That's a kind of a quick first easy step in getting people to communicate and collaborate daily. So that one is kind of a really low hanging fruit. I think the whole collaborative planning workshop piece is a great way if they're starting a new initiative, like it's a new point in time, new initiative, new quarter, and you want to reset a little bit. It's a great way to build in that initial collaboration and start ideating and building in a backlog. But yeah, it kind of depends where they're at and what their goals are with Agile. So I don't know that there's a one size fits all answer, but yeah.
I kind of look at it this way that, and I don't know if this will answer your question directly, but it's kind of top of mind, a theme that I've been dealing with lately. So does everybody know what the 4 Ps of marketing are? Or have you heard of them? So it basically, it goes back to like the 1950s or 60s to a gentleman who put forward this theory of it's really 4 Ps drive marketing: place, price, promotion, and product, right? Just the 4 Ps of marketing. So it's become classical, like MBA. This is how you learn marketing. Over the years, I think what agility brings to the table is it brings it back to the most important P of all, our people. So to answer the question, I think was asked earlier, where do you enter in? I'd like to talk about the people, and the people that we have today in marketing. They're much more technologically savvy. They've grown up with platforms, with functionality of software, but they've lost a certain discipline of marketing along the way. And then on the other side, we have older marketers, which I'll throw myself in the ring, who understand marketing and its discipline, but don't get the technology. I like to think I'm a beautiful blend of both. However, what I see in the marketplace is that we have one or the other. And so I think this is a great way of saying we're bridging this gap of skills and capabilities and bringing together your teams to work as a team, as opposed to in the silos where they probably are existing now. And at the end of the day, if you want to deliver a customer experience, you need to connect those dots first of your people and understand what they're delivering into the marketplace. Otherwise, it's going to be fractured, and it's going to be like the crappy marketing you probably see coming at you, where you look at it and go, how did they come up with this? Weren't they thinking? Right? And we've all seen that probably on a daily basis. Yes, fractured. I have other words for it, but fractured we'll stick with for now.